Hey, what's up? It's Jake from Nimbus DevOps, and I'm here today to talk to you about loops, and not the fruity kind, but the kind that we're going to use to learn how to get further in our Python journey. So up to this point, we've been doing conditionals, and to really round out what you need to know, and we're kind of getting toward the end of what a sysadmin is probably ever going to use, and we're going to be moving more into the dev side of things here soon enough. But I want to talk about looping. So you've experienced looping with other programs. You may have noticed that Python does it a little bit different. First of all, we'll talk about, well, what is looping? So it's just repeating execution of a code in a block more than once according to whatever the loop parameters are. Um, there's different ways to do it. There's different purposes, and we're just going to go over the for loop and the while loop. And this video is just going to cover the for loop. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much all you're going to need. It's definitely possible to do everything you need using a for loop or a while loop. There are some theoretical things and some performance things you might want to take into consideration, where one is faster than the other, but those are tests and things you can do for code refactoring and performance optimization and things like that. But we're just going to get into the basics really. So go ahead and get into an interactive shell. And I want you to try typing for number in, and then we're going to make a sequence 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, colon, and then hit enter. And then I'm just going to say print number, and then hit enter. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what just happened? It just prints all the numbers from 0 to 4, obviously. The for loop is fed this list, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And at each iteration number, or I should say in each iteration number, because every time it iterates through the list, it's saving a variable number. You can think about it like that. So it's going to say for number in this list, and then the first item, first object in this list or element is going to be 0. So number is 0. Print number, print 0. Okay, done. Now we're going to iterate to our second iteration, and we're going to be at element 1, print 1, element 2, print 2, print 3, print 4. So that's what it's doing. The number value changes at every iteration according to which value is next in the sequence. So once the sequence is exhausted, the for loop terminates and the execution of the code resumes normally after the loop. So if you had a program, for example, and it just said for number in list 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm going to print number. If I had extra stuff in here, it would just do that after the for loop is done. So it knows that it's done once it reaches the end of this sequence. So there's different ways to do this. You can also iterate with something called a range, and sometimes we need to iterate over a range of numbers. So instead of saying, well, I need you to give me 5 numbers, you could just say for number in range and then pass it 5, and then I could say print number and see what it does. It does the exact same thing. Now remember that these are all 0 indexed sequences, so everything starts at 0. So if you say range 5, you're asking for the first 5 numbers starting at 0. So 0 would be the first number. 1, 2, 3, 4 would be 5 numbers. So if you actually wanted it to go up to 5, you would have to do for range 6, like that. You can call by passing one value this way, and I think it's a lot easier. This is used for number and range, is used very extensively in Python when it comes to creating sequences, because you can create them without having to type a bunch of elements in a list. You can just type one number, and it acts as a stop, right? So when you get to 6, stop. So that's why it only prints to the 6th number. In this case, number 5. Again, counting from 0. You can also pass 2 values as a start and a stop, or even 3, a start, a stop, and a step, which we saw when we were doing some of the other assignment operators. But if we were to do 2 numbers, I could say I want you to create a list. Oops, not a 4. Something like create a list in range 10, and it'll create 10 numbers. So you can make sequences with range, but you can also list elements in a sequence using the range, like 3 and 8 was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is your starting value 3, and stopping value is 8, which is why it doesn't actually list 8, because 8 is the stopping value. So things you have to remember. If you want to step through and do all the even numbers, you could do list range, right? Starting number is 0, and let's say my stopping number is 20, and I want to do every 2 numbers. I could do something like that, and it would go 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and stop at 20. So I could do the same thing, starting with the number 1 and doing every other number, and it would print all of the odd numbers. So yeah, so this is quite useful for things. If you wanted to do all the numbers, you would stop at 20 and you would get your number 20, and that would work the same for the odd numbers, 1 through 21, because 21 is a stop. So anyways, that's one way to do that. Just ignore the fact that you have to wrap this range thing in here within the list. The range object is a little bit special. In this case, we just understand that what values it'll return to us. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but yeah, so you got your start, your stop, and your step. So remember that. You can also iterate over a sequence. Okay, so if I, let's go into my file here and get out of the terminal, or the shell, and we're going to say we have some surnames, or last names if you're American, and we're going to say we have Johnson, Everett, and Bailey. Okay, those are our names, and each of these is its own string. So let me go ahead and do that. All right, so I made a list, right? And that's my list. And I'm going to say for position, okay, so each step through the sequence of iteration of the sequence is going to be called a position. For position in range, and then I'm going to show you a new function. Well, we've used this a little bit, but we haven't really used it, which is length. For position in length surnames, what do I want to do? I just want to print the position and the surname. Surnames position. So what is this doing? So I'm creating a list here, this sequence of surnames, and then I'm saying for position in range length surnames. So surnames has a length of 3. It has 3 elements in it. And so it knows it's 3 long. So it's going to go, okay, so for position in the range 1, do this. Range 2, do this. Range 3, do this. And it will iterate through all of these elements in this sequence as such. And then I'm printing the position, so which would be like the name of it, right? Or the number, sorry. So that would be like 0. And then the surnames, and then the element in surnames position would be the actual name. So let's go ahead and check and see what this looks like. If that sounds confusing, I'm sorry for your loss. Let's see here. So let's go Python loops 0 Johnson, 1 Everett, 2 Bailey. So this might seem like it's getting a little bit more complicated, but stick with me, we'll hang in there. So when you're trying to figure this out, sometimes the best approach is to take like an inside out approach to breaking this down. So you'd start from the innermost part of what you're trying to understand and expand outward. So let's start with len surnames, which is the length of surnames list, which is 3. Therefore, the range len surnames is actually transformed into range 3. Okay, so that'll give us the range 0 to 3, and if you were algebraically express this, it would be like this. So 0 to 3, including 0, not including 3. Again, because 0 is a starting point, 3 is a stopping point. Move my cursor so you can see that a little bit better. It would look like this. Okay, so that's what that is. It's just the sequence 0, 1, 2. So this means the for loop will run 3 iterations. The first one, the position will take the value of 0, while in the second one, it takes the value of 1 and the value of 2 in the last iteration. So it's basically index positions, right? So position 0, if you're naming these by numbers 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, and 2, at index 0 of this list, we have the value Johnson as a string, right? The string Johnson. So that is the actual index for this surname list. So when we say surname and then followed by that with the list brackets position, every time that it iterates through one of these positions, at position 0, it's going to provide the position and then the surname of that position, which in this case is Johnson. And then when the for loop iterates to range from range 0 to range 1, it gets to this value, and it's going to print the position, which is 1, and then print the actual variable surname list position, which is Everett. And so that's what it's doing. So if you, all that to say, if you're ever trying to figure this out, if you take an inside-out approach, it makes it a little bit easier. This style of looping is actually closer to how Java and C do it. Python, it's quite rare to see code like this. You can just iterate over any sequence or collection, so there's no need to get the list of positions and retrieve the elements out of it during every iteration like we did here. So we can change this to make it a little bit more Pythonic. So we can leave our list, right? But instead of all this business, I can just say for surname in surnames, and you'll see this a lot in Python. Surname isn't an actual variable. It's just, it could be for I in surnames, for N in surnames, for platypus in surnames. It could be anything you want it to be. But surnames is plural, so this makes like logical sense because it's like a singular name, right? For surname, this one, in surnames, this list. So you could do for surname in surnames, print, well, the surname, because you just want the one name, right? So you could do that. So this would be a more Pythonic version, and what you'd see is this, and you just won't have the numbers. And so that's a very simple way to do it, a very Pythonic way to do it. For singular in plural, you'll see that when iterating through a list with a for loop. And you can do this without doing a bunch of code like we did with conditionals, where you have to do if, elif, 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 else. You can just go, hey, here's a big list of stuff, right? Just go wild, Mr. For Loop. Go through it all you want, and you could add to this, and it doesn't change your code at all. It'll just keep going, and you can make as many names as you want. You can pass it a file, and it'll read through it, and like there's all kinds of stuff you can do. So that's pretty cool. Because any person who reads English language can look at that and kind of understand what it does without really understanding what a for loop does. So that's kind of nice. Let's say you do want to print the position though, right? The for loop can iterate over the surnames list and give back each element in order at each iteration. And running the code will print 3 surnames one at a time, right? Well, if you want to print a position, or if you needed it for some reason, you might think I need to go back to doing range, length, whatever, right? But you can actually use that enumerate function that we went over to do exactly this. So instead of for surname and surnames, what we can do is go for position, comma, surname in enumerate surnames. Now you're going to see why in the heck we went over enumeration. Print position, comma, surname. Okay, so it's basically going for, and then I'm giving two values, a position and a surname, and I'm going to enumerate in here, and I'm going to be able to pull out both values. And with this very short code, you're going to see that I can create the exact same output that I used in doing the range length thing, but this is again much more Pythonic. So this is kind of interesting. So when you do enumerate, it gives back a tuple. All right, the position, surname at each iteration. All right, but still it's more readable and efficient than range length. You can call enumerate with the start parameter. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can have it start at something instead of 0. Yeah. So anyways, you can use a for loop to iterate over lists, tuples, pretty much anything. Python calls iterable. So as long as it's iterable, you can iterate over it with a for loop. It's a really important concept, so make sure that you really understand this. Feel free to ask any questions, because from here I'm going to go into a while loop, which is somewhat similar, but with some conditions that need to be met first. So we'll get into that, but good luck and have fun.